Izzy, thank you very much for those kind words of introduction. And, when I started thinking about this speech, it is fair to say the world did look a little bit different. These are unique times. So, from the start, I want to be clear with you that just because it's difficult for me at this moment to be expansive on new approaches, or set out fresh policy with concrete certainty, I won't be holding back on the sense of ambition or gratitude I have for local government. Because from the smallest parish or the biggest urban metropolis, from our historic counties to reinventing coastal towns, our communities, in all their glorious diversity, are what makes this country so special. As such, your work in local government, at the heart of these communities, and our work at MHCLG in backing you, is fundamental to Britain's future. That's why, as I said last year, I'm such a strong believer in local government. Now, a lot has changed in the past 12 months, with more big changes to come. But what hasn't changed is the significance of local government and my regard for you as the bedrock of our democracy, delivering day in, day out for our communities. And before I go on, I want to pay tribute to Lord Porter, who, after leading the Local Government Association with distinction since 2015, is handing over to his successor, James Jamieson. Now, I've got to know James well over the last year, and I know that I'll continue to enjoy an excellent relationship with him. Albeit for how long? Well, that will be for somebody else to decide. But the sector could not have had a more determined champion than Gary, and is all the stronger for it. I pay tribute to you, Gary, for the contribution you've made and the leadership that you have shown. Yes, the fish and chips and everything in between, but most profoundly on reform, and how I'm proud that we've delivered that lift on the housing revenue account cap, which you championed, to empower councils to get on and build more homes. There are no excuses now. And I know, Gary, that whilst you're stepping back from one role, you'll be stepping up your challenge to all of us to see that these new freedoms are harnessed to the fullest possible extent to help build the homes our country needs. Thank you, Gary, for your service, your leadership, and for being such an outstanding advocate for the good that local government can do. And as we look towards new leadership at the LGA, I can't see a better future for this country that doesn't have local democracy at the heart of it. People taking control of their lives and places, striving for better for themselves and those they love, for their neighbours, their towns and their cities. There is a golden thread that runs through each of us, binding us not just together, but to the places we call and have called home. And that's an emotional connection, of which local government plays such an important part in safeguarding and shaping. And this is all the more impressive because local government has a role in this most delicate of things, through to the most robust. Because whether we're talking about big national programs on housing, transport and infrastructure, or maximising local economic growth, the fight against knife crime, or revitalising our high streets, it always comes back to strong local leadership. I very much appreciate your efforts to support local areas, to prepare for Brexit in extremely testing circumstances. Preparations that will be central to ensuring that all communities stand to benefit. And as we mark 2 years since the still unimaginable tragedy at Grenfell, continuing to keep people in similar buildings safe and critically transforming our approach to building safety to ensure nothing like this can ever happen again. It's remarkable to think that local government provides over 800 services to residents and businesses in England, a breadth and volume of responsibility that sometimes, yes, isn't always fully appreciated. But as you say, councils can, and they do. You've continued to deliver against a difficult backdrop of constrained finances and big demographic shifts. And looking ahead, it's clear there's a lot at stake, not only for vulnerable groups, but the whole of all of our communities. I'm thankful for everything you've done to rise to these challenges and to help reduce our debts and rebuild our economy. A significant contribution that notably hasn't just been about driving efficiencies, but increasingly about innovating and improving public service. I know this has been far from easy. And that's why one of my absolute priorities is to deliver a sustainable future for local government. This year's local government finance settlement is an important step towards this. A settlement that provided a real terms boost in spending, an extra £650 million for social care, and which confirmed the government's continuing approach to address negative RSG. Much of your funding, such as retained business rates, which have risen annually in line with the growth in business rates, and council taxes, of course, already locally sourced, underlining our commitment to putting local government truly in the driving seat, answerable not to central government, but to the communities that you serve. And we remain committed to implementing local government finance reforms, including increased business rates retention, incentives to authorities to help grow businesses, and a new approach to distributing funding. I'm grateful for your support and input as we continue to advance these significant reforms. But it's right that we consider how we implement these reforms. And I recognise your concerns that we can't wait until the end of the year to provide you with this clarity, with budget preparations and planning for 2020-2021 already underway. Overall funding available to local government will, of course, be a matter for the spending review. But I will continue to make a powerful case for you, for local government, as a proud champion of the sector, to see that local government receives the support needed and gains as much certainty as we can, as early as we can. It's right that we look at the challenges and opportunities you face and the funding you're clearly relying upon, including for social care, when we consider what a sustainable settlement looks like for local government for the coming years. It's clear that growing and evolving challenges demand we go further. And at this time of great change, look to map the way ahead. Look to get local government onto the front foot with a renewed confidence and sense of purpose, which I think means delivering a new deal for local government. This is about funding, yes, but it's also about, I believe, a greater sense of shared responsibility for the difference we can all make for our people and our places. And as someone who saw my father stand in your shoes, I take this responsibility extremely seriously, and I know you do too. Allied to my pragmatism and my passion for entrepreneurship, innovation, respecting the agency we all have to improve our lives and those around us. It's why I'm a Conservative. And it's why I'm keen to see us working together more collaboratively to harness this collective responsibility, to drive improvement, to get the difficult balance between managing day-to-day pressures and being dynamic and demanding excellence. That's why I believe that the next leader of my party will need to look afresh at the entire ecosystem underpinning local government and acknowledge that we all have a role to play to spot problems earlier, champion best practice, and help each other improve. Central government, for example, could and should do more to identify and support struggling councils earlier, to prevent failure and protect residents. The local audit system, too, could and should step up more robustly, not just because it reinforces confidence in financial reporting, but because it reinforces service delivery and ultimately our faith in local democracy, with potentially far-reaching consequences when audits aren't carried out properly and fail to detect significant problems. That's why we must heed concerns that have recently been raised by audit quality and whether the audit framework is too fragmented. To that end, I've committed to reviewing this framework. Now, I'm approaching this with an open mind, but our aim must be to ensure the framework helps members, Section 151 officers, and chief executives make informed and responsible decisions about improvements. I'm also interested in exploring how we can invite greater input from citizens on this as part of a more open system. I know the LGA, which does so much great work to raise the bar, is also keen to see the sector getting better support, which is why we've strengthened the focus on leadership and efficiency this year as part of the £19 million offer to help authorities improve that's delivered by the LGA. Like you, I want councils to excel, and I'm open to your thoughts about what more we can do together to support this. I know the new burdens doctrine is key to this. Authorities must feel confident that the doctrine is doing its job, fully assessing and funding any new requirements placed on them, something I've not hesitated to impress upon my cabinet colleagues. And I'm grateful for the LGA's insight and support to help my department make sure authorities don't lose out financially. To guard against this, it's right we look at the process and assure ourselves that it is fit for purpose. This is a conversation we must have with you, and I look forward to hearing what you want to see on this front. As I've said, it's in all our interest to see that you succeed. And by fighting your corner in the spending review, by backing you to break new ground, by standing with you to take greater collective responsibility, I'm confident we can deliver the new deal that local government and our communities deserve. A deal that resets the relationship between local and central government, that sees us adapting with ever more agility to face the future with optimism, that strengthens the special bond we share with our citizens and renews our democracy. I want to see these plans set out in more detail by the next leader of my party in a green paper, and welcome your input. Because there's so much great work and expertise out there in our authorities. And I want us to do much more to celebrate and spread this, to ensure that early intervention and prevention becomes the norm rather than the exception, as seen so powerfully in the Troubled Families programme. This inspirational initiative that's been helping around 400,000 families facing multiple challenges change their lives by fundamentally changing the way local services are delivered, with services joining up around whole families to overcome problems before they escalate. Now, when compared to a similar comparison group, the latest evaluation saw the number of children going into care down by a third. The number of adults going to prisons and juveniles in custody, down by a quarter and a third respectively. And 10% fewer people claiming job seekers allowance. It's why I'm such a passionate advocate of the programme, and why I want to see a renewed programme for the years ahead. Yes, the name might not be right, and there are other improvements we can make. But the programme is demonstrating the change in people's lives it is making, and we need to get behind it. Housing is another vital area where local authorities need to strengthen their ability to deliver. This is undoubtedly our top domestic priority, the challenge of a generation. Whatever else changes, that will not change. And as we mark the centenary of the Addison Act, I think it's fitting that councils are once again leading the charge to help increase supply to 300,000 new homes a year. In doing so, we want to help you maximise the potential the lifting of the HRA cap offers by considering how you might boost your capabilities and develop joint ventures, whether with housing associations or indeed the private sector, to unlock more sites, ensuring we do reach the full ambition of a new generation of council homes. This push also demands we build faster and reduce delays. That's why, as I said last week, we will be publishing an accelerated planning green paper to look at how greater capacity and capability within local planning authorities, stronger plan making, better performance management, and procedural improvements can accelerate the end-to-end planning process for all. Delivery also depends on getting communities on board, communities who are more likely to welcome new development when it's underpinned by the right infrastructure. Our £5.5 billion Housing Infrastructure Fund, which aims to unlock new homes in areas of greatest demand, reflects this. And as we get funds out the door, just this month in Woking and Truro, it's having an effect. Self-sacrifice, frugality, and belief. These are virtues we rarely place in the context of public service, preferring instead to talk in pseudo-motivational management speak of dynamism, high energy, being agile. These words and phrases, however, are not the virtues of human beings. No, they're the characteristics of systems and processes. Some ways, you could say, they're slightly mechanical words. And yet when I see the best of public service, it's the opposite of the machine. It's deeply human. Fundamentally, it's an honest and empathetic connection between people. A social worker and a vulnerable child. A care worker and their elderly patient. A teacher and proud parents. It's in these moments, these connections, that public services becomes more than material and changes how we feel about ourselves. Because public service should lift us all, those who give and those who receive. But it's easy to forget this deeper truth, easier to fall back on mechanical words, on systems and processes. You've had more pressure than most and a greater weight placed on you to help us correct the nation's finances. And for this reason and others, it is so impressive that in spite of all of that, when we meet, you don't talk in spreadsheets or corporate strategies, well, not all of you at least, but in terms of the people you love and the communities you serve. I can see that self-sacrifice, that frugality, and that belief in yourselves that you can make a difference. When thinking about what I wanted to say to you all, I knew above all that I wanted to say thank you for staying true to those virtues and never losing them. Thank you to the councillors who give up their time to represent the communities they serve. Thank you to the officers who work so diligently and fairly in supporting to deliver local priorities. Now is clearly a time of change. A new Prime Minister will be in post shortly, and a new government. Such moments provide us with opportunities that are so important. That sense of renewal. An opportunity to ask the bigger and more fundamental questions. A renewed opportunity to ask ourselves how we can deliver better, smarter services for the people we serve. And as we open this new chapter, be positive about the future for our communities. Be positive about the future of our country. And yes, most profoundly, the intrinsic and special role that local government has to play. Thank you very much.